Aleph Gimel. Yud Aleph Gimel and Negaim. Colored leather and the garments do not become tamei with Negaim. Houses, regardless of their color, become tamei with Negaim. These are the words of Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda says leather is like houses. Reb Shimon says these colored naturally become tamei. Those dyed by man do not become tamei. A garment whose warp is colored and its weft is white, or its weft is colored and its warp is white, is always judged according to its appearance. Gardeners, garments become tamei when garments are green or when reddest of the red. If it was deep green and spread deep red, or deep red and spread deep green, it is tamei. If it is changed and expanded, or changed and did not expand, it is as if it did not change. Rabbi Yehuda says it should be examined anew. That which is the same as the end of the first week is washed and combined. That which is the same at the end of the second week is burnt. That which expands at the end of either week is burnt, and if it turned dull during the initial inspection, Rabbi Yishmael says it is washed and then confined. The sages say he does not need to. If it turned dull after the first week and is washed and confined, if it turned dull after the second week, it tears it out and burns when he tore. And it requires a patch. Then Rambam says it does not require a patch.
Okay. So again, so what happens is if the thing fades and they tear off the patch, you tear out the piece that was affected, then it's still held under a certain amount of suspicion. Okay, and what you do is you're going to put a patch on top of that garment and see what happens later. Okay, and now we're going to see what happens. Chazar nega labeged. So you've got a garment that had a nega on it, and the nega faded, and you cut it out and replace it with a patch. Okay, but now a nega appeared somewhere else on that same garment. Okay, then if somebody is wants to rescue the patch, I mean, let's just say you're talking about a poor person who's like every little bit of scrap of cloth is valuable to him, he's allowed to cut off that patch from the beged before it has to be burned, because the beged previously had a nega on it. If it gets another nega on it, that's it, it's for the fire. Okay, but the patch you can save. Now what happens if instead of the new nega appearing on the somewhere else in the garment, it appears on the patch itself? So now it's an interesting thing, because the patch is considered part of the garment in as much as it says, okay, the garment now has another nega on it, the garment is going to have to be burned, but you can again detach the patch. Okay, you still burn the beged, but the patch is now quarantined, because it's the first time that it's appeared on the patch, whereas it's the second time for the rest of the beged. So now the patch is being treated as a suspected as having a suspected saras for the first time. Atola min hamusgar betahor. Okay, so now what do we have? We have a beged that was quarantined, and he cut off a piece of that quarantined beged to use as a patch on the tahor garment. Okay. Now, what happens if the beged itself gets a nega? So now, what the patch is now the second time that it's had a nega on it. Okay, so the patch is going to have to be burned, but the beged is going to be inspected for the first time, and it's going to be quarantined. Kaza lamatlis, what happens if the nega goes back onto the patch, not onto the rest of the beged? Okay, habeged harishon yisaref. Then the whole original garment that it came from, even though it's been detached, it's still considered part of the first beged, and therefore it and the whole of the first garment must be burned. And the patch itself, well, it doesn't get burned yet, because it's now going to be quarantined along with the second garment that it's attached to. So the patch has got this dual identity. It's part of the original garment and it's part of the new garment. So it's going to be preserved to serve as a siman for the second beged. Okay. Kaita. So a kaita is a kind of a garment. It's either a summer garment or or some sort of Greek shilshon. whatever the case, it's some kind of garment that's typically got lots of stripes. And we've already learned that a nega only affects undyed wool. Okay, so if it's a garment that's got colored stripes on it, then we don't look at Negaim in the colored patches, we only look at the white patches. Okay, so now there's it's a stripy garment. Okay. She is pasifasim tzevoim milovanim, white and colored. Posin mizeh lezeh. It can spread from one white stripe to another white stripe. So if it, let's say it goes through a color and onto another white stripe, then that's considered a pisayon, a spreading from a. It's
skips over.
So it skips
over.
And we count it when it arrives in the next white patch, because now we can see that this is definitely a nega. Shalu is Rabbi Eliezer. So now they come and ask Rabbi Eliezer. And I remember we had this question before, but a similar sort of setup when we were talking about a burn on the palm of the hand where it's not possible to grow white hair and it can't grow anymore. And so they're going to ask the question, Hooray, who pasifas yachid? What happens if there's only one stripe of white in this garment and the entire thing is filled up with a nega to start with? Amalahen lo shamati. He says, look, it has to be quarantined, but I don't know why. Amalo Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Alamed bo. So the same Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, can I give you an explanation? Amalo im lekaim divrei chachamim hein. Okay, if you're gonna support the Masorah that I have, Amalo shema yamod bo shnei shavuos, because maybe it'll just stay still for 2 weeks. This is honestly, as an answer, it's quite surprising that Rabbi Eliezer didn't think of this, because it's actually like pretty obvious from the halacha, because we say the only reason for confusion with a human is because with a person, if the nega stays the same for 2 weeks, then we let him go. Then we let him go and declare it tahor. But if it's with a beged or a house, for that matter, with a beged and a house, staying the same is not a good thing. If it stays there, we're going to end up burning it or knocking it down.
Right.
Okay. So this is what he says. Shema yamod bo shnei shavuos. Maybe it'll just stay the same for 2 weeks. And anything that stays the same for 2 weeks in a beged is declared tameh. Hold on a second. Yes, there's a sock. Okay. So he says, Shkoyach, thank you for giving me a logical support to the Masorah that I had, and why didn't I think of that first? Now, if a pisayon is directly adjoining an existing nega going into more white, then any amount is considered a spreading. But if it's rachok, in other words, if it had to go through a color before it got to the white again, then it has to be a kagris. Choser kagris, and one that a nega that comes back after it had already dimmed after the second week, and he tore out the nega. So now the garment was allowed to be used again with a patch. And now another nega appears on it. So this now has to be a minimum of a kagris again in order to count for burning the garment.
Okay.
Yeah. Hashesi v'ha'erev. So warp thread and weft thread. There are different grades of wool that are used for warp and weft. Mitamim v'negaim miyad. They can immediately become tameh with negaim, even when they're just in thread form. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So basically, as soon as they've been spun. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, hashesi mishi shalek v'ha'erev miyad. So the shesi has to have been cooked. Right? They cook it in hot water in order to bleach it. Okay, and so the shesi is that's the warp. That's the one that's the one that's loaded onto the loom straight. The vertical threads, and the horizontal ones are the weft. That's the shesi. That's the erev. So that becomes tameh immediately. Va'unin shall pishtan mishayis labnu, and the what of things of linen? What's unin shall pishtan? That's the bundles of flax which are going to be turned into linen. from the time that they've been bleached. How much has to be on the wall in order to be susceptible to Negaim? In order to be able to weave a 3x3 square with both the warp and the weft. Even if the whole thing is shesi thread, or all of it is weft thread. It's just got to be enough that if you had to load load it onto the loom, you would be able to make a 3x3 square. Haisa psikos. Now, what if there are psikos? Psikos, that is the bekas of chute shesi v'erev ketzarim. So the so there were breaks in the thread. Eina mitama b'negaim. It cannot become tame with negaim because it's not considered a chibur. It's not considered that they're joined because it can fall apart. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, afilu psika achas ukashara eina mitama. Even if you had a psika and you tied it, he says it's not mitame. It's not mitame because it's well, he doesn't say the reason in the commentary over here, but he says there's no repair for it basically, and it cannot become tameh. However, the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Yehuda, and if it was tied up again, then it is once again susceptible to negaim. Okay, we're ready for chazara. Ches hey.
Hey. Anywhere subject to becoming tameh from the nega of Baharis impedes the status of complete spreading. Anywhere but not subject to becoming tameh from the nega of Baharis does not impede the status of complete spreading. How so? The nega covered him completely except for the head or the beard, or except for a boil, burn, or wound, literally onto a rebellious boil, wound, or burn or wound. If the hair of the head or the beard fell out, or the boil, burn, or wound partially healed, they allow him to remain mitahor. If it covered him completely except for the area of the size of a half a lentil next to the head, beard, boil, burn, or wound, and subsequently the hair of the head or beard fell out, or the boil, burn, or wound partially healed, even if a normal-looking skin became afflicted with baharis, he is tameh until it covers him completely. If two baharis, one tameh and one tahor, spread from one to the other, and then cover the afflicted person completely, he is tahor, on his upper lip or on his lower lip, on his two fingers or on his two eyelids, even though only when they are pressed together do they appear as one, he is tahor. If he covered him completely except for a white blemish, he's tameh. If after being covered completely, his extremities reverted to a type of white blemish, he is tahor. If his extremities reverted on a patch of skin smaller than a lentil, the mayor renders a tameh, and the sages say a white blemish smaller than a lentil is an indication of tumah originally, but is not an indication of tumah afterwards. The Kohen shall confine someone who comes completely white. If white hair appears, the Kohen confines him. Then either both or one of the white hair becomes black or shortened, a boil touched or surrounded both of one of the white hairs, or the white hairs become separated by either a boil, the healing of a boil, a burn, a healing skin of a burn, a dull white blemish. If subsequently a patch of living skin or white hair appears, the afflicted person is tameh. If no patch of living skin appeared, nor any white hair, he is tahor. But in all cases, if the extremities revert to a normal appearance, they remain as they were. If it covered him partially, he is tameh. If it covered him completely, he is tahor.
Okay.
Very confusing.
Oh, hello. Good Gimel Vav.
Okay. The following items do not reduce the opening to less than a handbreadth. Bone does not reduce it if the source of tumah is bone. Flesh does not reduce it if the source of tumah is flesh. And an olive-sized piece of coarse flesh does not reduce the opening of an olive-sized piece of carcass, does not. A lentil-sized piece of sheretz does not. An egg-sized piece of food does not. Grain growing in a window does not. And a very thin spider web does not. The carcass of a kosher species of a bird that was designated for food does not. The carcass of a non-kosher species of a bird that was designated for food and was rendered capable of contracting tumah does not. Warp and wolf threads that are contracted to us do not. Also, a brick made from a base hapras does not. And these are the words of Rameir. You can come and say the brick reduces the opening because this earth is tahor. This is the rule. Anything that is tahor reduces the opening, and anything that is tameh does not reduce the opening. A ziz size ledge conveys tumah, even if its width is numinal. Where gizra and gavlis type ledges convey tumah only if they are a handbreadth wide. What is a Ziz type ledge? A ledge whose face extends downward. And what is a Gizrod type ledge? One whose face upwards. When does a Ziz type ledge convey tumor, even if it is a width is minimal? When the ledge is 3 rows of stones, which is 12 handbreadths above the doorway. If the ledge is higher, it spreads tumor only if it is a handbreadth wide. Ornamental archways and awnings spread tumor if they are a handbreadth wide. A Ziz type ledge on top of the doorway spreads tumor if it is a handbreadth wide. If it is on top of a 2 finger breadth window, or if on a gimlet window, it has no minimum size. Rabbi Yossi says it must be equal in size.
Yud Aleph Daled.
Regarding a piece of tummy iron that one mixed with a piece of iron, if the majority is from the tummy source, the newly formed utensil is tummy. If the majority is from the tahor source, the utensil is tahor. If it is half and half, it is tummy, and the same applies to a utensil made from kalama and cattle dung. A doorbell with a knob is tummy, but if it is plated, it is tahor. A pin tabla and a bolt are tummy, and regarding a door bolt with a knob, Yeshua says it may only drag it from this door and hang it on another one on Sabbath. But Tarfon says it is like all other utensils and may be carried within a courtyard. The bit of a bridle is tummy, and the cheek pieces are tahor. Rabbi Eliezer says the cheek piece is tummy, and the sages say nothing is tummy except the bit. But when they are joined, everything is tummy. A whirl made of metal, a Rabbi Kiva rules the tummy, but the sages rule the tahor, and a plated whirl is tahor. A spindle, a distaff, a rod, and a symphonia, a flute, and if they are made of metal, they are tummy, and if they are plated, they are tahor. However, if a symphonia has a receptacle for valves resembling wings, it is tummy in either case.
Okay.
And,
Kavos.
okay. Yudalit. There are 4 types of people who go to the study hall. One who goes but does not act, the reward for going in is in the hand. The one who acts but does not go, the reward for acting is in his hand. The one who goes and acts is a pious person. One who does not go and does not act is a wicked person. There are 4 types of people who sit before Kakamin: a sponge, a funnel, a strainer, and a sieve. A sponge, which soaks a sieve, and a sponge which soaks up everything. A funnel which takes up one end and passes it through the other end. A strainer which moves the wine but collects the dregs, and a sieve which removes the flour and dust but collects the fine dust. Any love that depends on a particular thing, that when that thing ceases, the love will cease. But when a love does not depend on any particular thing, it will never cease. What is an example of love that depends on a particular thing? The love of Amnon and Tamar. And what is an example of love that does not depend on a particular thing? The love of David and Jonathan.
Okay. Okay, finishing Yevamos.
Okay. Zion. Akiva said, when I went down to Nehardis to fix the leap year, I encountered the Chameh of the Bays daily. He said to me, I have heard that in Eretz Yisrael there did not appear a woman to be married by the testimony of a single witness, except for Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. I said to him, that is correct. And he said to me, tell them in my name, you know that the country is a turmoil because of ravaging troops. I have auditioned for Rabbi Gamliel, the elder, that would permit a woman to be married by the testimony of a single witness. When I came and presented the matter before Rabbi Gamliel, he rejoiced at my words and said, we have found a companion for Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. As a result of the exchange, Rabbi Gamliel recalled that some men had once been killed in Tel Azar, and Rabbi Gamliel, the elder, had permitted their wives to be married on the testimony of a single witness. And it then became established to remarriage on the testimony of a single witness, and became established to marriage on the testimony of one witness, quoting another, and the testimony of a slave, a woman, and a slave woman. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua said, we do not permit a woman to be married by the testimony of a single witness. Rabbi Kiva says, not by the testimony of a woman, a slave woman, or relatives. They said to him, there was once an incident where some Levium journeyed to Zar, the city of day palms, and one of them fell ill during the journey, and they brought him to an inn. On the return trip, they said to the woman innkeeper, where is our companion? She said to him, he died, and I buried him. And they bid his wife to be married. He said to him, shouldn't the wife of a Kohen be as good as a woman innkeeper? He replied, when women innkeepers believed, this woman innkeeper brought out to them his staff, his baggage, and the Torah scroll in his possession.
Okay. Have you got Kesubas there?
Yeah, we have. Okay. We have Aleph. A virgin is married on Wednesday and a woman on Thursday. A woman is not right.
Widow.
A woman is married on Wednesday and a widow on Thursday. For twice a week, the courts are in session in the town, so on Mondays and Thursdays, so that if he had a claim concerning her virginity, he would go early the next morning to court. The kasuba of a virgin is 200 zuz, and that of a widow is 100. A virgin who is a widow, divorcee, or had performed kalitza after Eresin, in all these cases, the kasuba is 200. The claim concerning the virginity can be lodged against them. Proselyte, a captive, and a slave who were ransomed, converted, or emancipated under the age of 3 years by one day, the kasuba is 200 zuz, and a claim concerning the virginity can be lodged against them.
Okay, hold on a sec. I've got a call.